From 1965 to 1977, Srila Prabhupada traveled the world preaching, working tirelessly translating his books, while at the same time keeping in constant communication with his disciples through personal letters. It is through these letters that we are able to derive life lessons, material and spiritual, as well as appreciate Srila Prabhupada's loving care for his disciples. Let us now hear from one of those fortunate devotees who personally received correspondence from His Divine Grace.
You know, for hundreds of years, until emails came in at the beginning of this century, posted letters were the most important form of communication in the world. Now, Srila Prabhupada, born in 1896, he was raised in and was the master of the Victorian Edwardian custom of letter writing. Letters signed like, your most humble and obedient servant. And this tradition included making copies of all your letters. And what's most important for us, his legacy, is that Srila Prabhupada insisted on making at least one copy of every letter he wrote. Now, if you go back on the database, the archives, you'll find copies of Prabhupada's letters going back into the 1940s. In fact, on this database, you'll find nearly 6,600 of Srila Prabhupada's letters. What a treasure! In the early days of the Swami's mission in 1967-68, his new devotees started to travel out around North America and then the world to start new temples. And don't forget, we had no books, no tape recorders, no cell phones. These devotees relied completely on weekly, if not almost daily, instructions from the Swami to carry out their missions in these strange places. What did we know? We were young and inexperienced in these matters, renting storefronts, giving lectures, cooking, advertising. We didn't know the philosophy all that well. We ran on two things: high enthusiasm and Prabhupada's letters. Srila Prabhupada was the master of everything: business, health, money, travel. What to speak of the spiritual knowledge that guided us? In his letters, Srila Prabhupada made himself present in all our affairs. Now, my personal experience with the power and efficacy of Prabhupada's letters really started in 1968, when our little band of 6 devotees, myself, Malati, Mukunda, Jamuna, Gurdas, and Janaki, we went to London to start an ISKCON center there. I think many of you know the story. I've written all these stories into my books, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. And we arrived in a foreign land with no money, no friends, no plan really, hoping Krishna's magic and Prabhupada's letters would guide us to success. And more than anything, that we would please the Swami. We arrived in London the first week in September 1968. 1 month later, on October 10th, I get this long letter from the Swami, who is in Seattle. My dear Shyamasundara, please accept my blessings. Since I received your letter dated September 26, 1968, I have not heard anything from either of you, so I am very anxious to know about the London affairs. You will be glad to know that Shivananda has already opened our ISKCON Radhakrishna temple in Berlin. Right away, Prabhupada's stirring up this transcendental competition with our God brothers. In those days, everyone tried to outdo the other guy. So he's saying, Shivananda's already got something started in Europe. What's happening with your business over there? I do not know why there is so much difficulty in finding out a house on rent. I was in correspondence with Mr. Webb, Annapurna's father, and he informed me that there were so many vacant houses, churches, etc. Simply, he wanted that somebody from our side should go to London and see which place was suitable. So if possible, you can see Mr. Webb. I understand that some of the Indian people there are sympathetic with you, but can they not help you in finding out a place? So at this stage, Prabhupada's a little pushy. He's almost like a grumpy father with his lazy children. Why aren't you getting anything going? It's been a month. And then he goes on. Regarding the money, $1,655 dispatched from Canada. I am very glad to learn that you have traced out the money and it is now safely lodged in your external sterling account. In my last letter, I asked you to deposit the money in my account in London, expecting that I may be called to visit London. But I can guess that immediately there is no such prospect of my going to London. Therefore, I am asking you to transfer the money to New York for being deposited in my account number 0420160131 with the First National City Bank, Grand Street Branch, Grand Street at Bowery, New York 13, New York. I immediately require about $10,000 for paying bills of Dai Nippon in Tokyo and Macmillan in New York. So please transfer the money to the above account and let me know when you have done so. Always there's money. Srila Prabhupada, the businessman, the practical businessman, who always knew where every cent was banked and spent. Here, the Kirtan party headed by Tamal Krishna and others are doing very nicely. They are selling Back to Godhead, sometimes more than 100 copies, minimum 50 copies, and collecting donations, $30 to $50 a day. So are you getting some collection by holding Kirtan in different places in London? There must be some source of income. Otherwise, how you can maintain yourselves there? More transcendental competition. I am also trying to get one secretarial office in the Church Center of the United Nations, with a view to confer with the heads of the United Nations, both political and ecclesiastical, to propagate our Krishna consciousness. Please big plans. Srila Prabhupada injected this theme into our minds from the earliest days. Go for the rhino. He always aimed for the biggest targets. Here he wants to get into the United Nations. Please let me know replies for all the points raised herein, and offer my blessings to Mukunda, Janaki, Malati, Jamuna, and Gurdas. So always his blessings. I understand that Malati is having some rheumatic condition, and it is causing pain and numbness. The best thing is to take hot baths and massage with camphor oil. And if it is too much painful, use Sloan's liniment. Best thing is to consult with some expert physician. The Ayurvedic medicine, which I could recommend, is probably not available in London. But if there is any Ayurvedic shop, let me know, and I shall recommend some medicine. Loving care for each of his disciples. And then the last thing he says about this health condition is, the best thing is to chant Hare Krishna loudly. So I was to see this so many times over the years. Srila Prabhupada, the tender doctor, able to diagnose physical problems and solve them quickly. So 1 month later, we're struggling in London. The Swami, he's understood by now, by now that we want to create the best possible situation in England for him. Not just a quick storefront in the suburbs, but a center fit for the royalty we feel he deserves in this land. which has so influenced his life under the British Raj. So a month later, contrasted with the rather pushy letter of a month ago, I get a letter dated November 12th, 1968. I can understand also that because you could not start a temple in London, you are feeling a little disappointed. But there is no cause for such disappointment. I can understand that you are doing very well there, even though we have not got our own temple. The pictures which Malati has sent me are very nice, very, very nice. From the pictures, I could understand how sincerely you are working there. So even we could not establish a temple, there our preaching work is not in vain. So there is no cause of disappointment. You go on with your work as you are doing, and everything will come successful in due course. So just see the compassion and deep understanding from across the world, how he was able to sense our struggles and encourage us now, not with competition or impatience, but sympathy and appreciation. Okay, we struggle on, and by the summer of 1969, we are making headway, and we have even built a huge Roth car for the first UK Ratha Yatra to be held in August through the centre of London, from Hyde Park to Trafalgar Square. I built this huge car almost single-handedly. There were still only a handful of devotees spread out all over London, but thousands of people showed up to the parade. And then, 100 yards after launching the cart at Marble Arch, the front wheel of the chariot collapsed, causing one of the biggest traffic jams in London history. Now, the deities were removed and hand carried to Trafalgar, but I hadn't slept in about 4 days, so I went home and collapsed myself into the deepest depression. And then a few days later, I got this letter from my spiritual master. My dear Shyamasundara, please accept my blessings. I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated August 5th, 1969, and have noted the contents. When I first heard that, that the wheels of the car collapsed, it was so great a shock to me that the whole day I was sick and morose. And now, after receiving this letter and your pictures, I am very much enlivened. The car was on the road, and the photo is taken with a multitude of people. That is your success. And as a result of this collapse, you have now got the sympathy of the Indian community as well as all the people of London. So much so that next year you can timely and conveniently erect 3 cars like that. So you see, Prabhupada took tragedy and turned it into total success. Regarding your recording of Nama Om and Hare Krishna, it is very, very good, and everyone says that it is technically all perfect. So your endeavor to induce the Beatles to cooperate with us is successful to a greater extent. Now, when I shall go to London, I shall carry with me various other recordings sung by me. And if these recordings can be attuned in the same technical perfection, then under my direction we can produce at least 12 Hare Krishna recordings in varieties of tunes. I am sure people will like them very much when they are presented through Mr. George Harrison and his company. So these letters of praise, this positive feedback, did so much to encourage us. And praise from the Swami was like a shot of adrenaline. And more than that, we were chasing rhinos for the Swami. So when Srila Prabhupada acknowledged that we had captured a rhino, it sent us over the moon. And we vowed to try for even bigger rhinos. And then he says, a long letter, but in this paragraph, he says, so far as Maya's activities are concerned, it will go on because we are in the kingdom of Maya. Just like in the snowfall season, especially in the western part of the world, you cannot stop falling of the snow. But for your protection, you have to take all possible precautions. Similarly, in the kingdom of Maya, you cannot stop the onslaught of her activities. The only protective measure is Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there is no alternative. So we have to engage ourselves always in some sort of Krishna activity. And whenever there is some attack by Maya, we shall not be surprised. Rather, we should immediately remember that we are in Maya's kingdom. So, of course, the spiritual advice to keep us on course, why we are doing all of this. And then at the end of the letter, a paragraph. I think you have already got the design of the throne and the measurements also. It should be 40 inches by 40 inches, and the height is 57 inches, including the canopy. The front pillars are 3 on each side, and the whole throne is supported by 4 lion claws. I shall send you very soon a real photo of the Los Angeles throne, Jagannath altar, and Vyasana. They have done it very nicely and perfectly. So I wish that in every center, similar arrangements may be done. So always Srila Prabhupada, the practical Srila Prabhupada, the CEO, down to the finest details. So as things took shape in London, and we became actually famous rock stars, with 2 best-selling records on the Apple label, concert tours of the UK and Europe, a constant presence on TV, a major part of the British scene, Prabhupada loved it. George Harrison paid to have Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book published. And I'll just read a short clip from Prabhupada's letter to me of February 7th, 1970, just to illustrate Srila Prabhupada, the promo man. He was the master of show business, too. This is February 7th, 1970. Your suggestion to introduce Krishna book along with the new record is very welcome. When do you expect to release the record? I think it must be before the 15th May, 1970. Under the circumstances, I wish to print a few thousands of a small booklet regarding Krishna book with a few pictures giving a short description of Krishna on the cover page. And this is Prabhupada's blurb. Krishna, the supreme rich, powerful, famous, and beautiful personality of Godhead, without any material attachment, is now available in book form. 400 pages reading matter and 52 colorful illustrations in first-class hardbound and wood-free paper printed. Those who have heard the Hare Krishna mantra record, as well as Govindam, will do well by procuring this deluxe book and keep at home as a great treasure. Try to understand the basic principles of the great movement of Krishna consciousness. So this was Prabhupada's advertising blurb to be published with the book. And he said this will be a subclause on the pamphlet. This was a very long letter, many pages, with all kinds of details about temple management in Europe, press propaganda, Krishna's beauty, and the Rath Yatra, money, plans for the future, etc. And then in the bottom paragraph, he answered the one question I had been waiting for. Shall I move out to George Harrison's house to live with him? Regarding George's request to supervise the work in his monastery, I think you should help him because he is our good friend. and by that way you shall be able to utilize his telegraph machine. This is a good plan. I completely approve of this. In October 1970, I went off to India to join Srila Prabhupada there for his Back to India invasion. And I spent the next 3 years traveling with Srila Prabhupada and 2 years as his personal secretary. So his letters to me are very few after 1970 because I was with the letter writer, or actually typing and mailing the letters to everyone else. So you can imagine 1970, 71, 72, 73. These were the years of Srila Prabhupada's most active expansion. Suddenly, hundreds of temples all over the world, and still his letters knitted them all together into a unified movement. Long periods in remote places with few letters. Then we'd hit a big city, 50 letters a day. And each letter to Prabhupada was important to him. Of course, I would sort them for the most urgent, but he would answer every letter. He would call me in very early each morning, and he would dictate, or maybe make notes, and I would compose, and then give him for examining and making any additions or corrections, and then he would sign them. And these were the happiest days of my life. You can read all of these moments in my books. So 6,600 perfect letters, and maybe even a few thousand were lost or are missing. If you examine this body of letter work from the perspective of time, place, and circumstance, it's a breathtaking study in literary perfection. Srila Prabhupada, the perfect father, friend, boss, CEO, the statesman, politician, lawyer, showman, travel guide, physician, psychologist, philosopher. What have I left out? Srila Prabhupada is the perfect scribe, the perfect author, a perfect person. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you again, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Prabhupada. Thank you.
Haribo.